Good evening, everyone. Tonight's shiur, as always, Le'il Nishmat Avi Mori Dov Ber Mer Menuven Halevi Imi Marati Rachel Bat Harav Michael. And tonight, of course, we talk about parshat Korach, but we're not going to talk about Korach. We're going to talk about one of the other aspects in the parsha, which is perhaps an aftermath of Korach. So I'm going to give a brief outline quickly of the parsha. Just basically, for those of us who have forgotten what happened since last year, basically the parsha talks about Korach and a number of different people and groups having some complaint about Moshe's leadership or about something else. We're not really sure. It doesn't always tell us what it was. But ultimately, we find that the perpetrators of this debate and rebellion against Moshe, who are really rebelling against Hashem, are punished in two different ways. One group is a heavenly fire comes out and destroys them. Another group is destroyed by the earth literally opening up and swallowing them. But again, after all that, we find a very seemingly interesting chapter, which is what we're going to focus on tonight. And that is the chapter which deals with this story about, I'm sorry, we got a problem, technical problem. Hold on a second. We have a technical problem here. Okay, 1 minute. I gotta press this. Where's the record? All right, sorry about the technical glitch. Okay, so as I said, the parsha talks about this case where we have a group of different people complaining about Moshe, and Hashem punishes them. And then we have the story where Hashem again comes to Moshe and seemingly wants to reinforce what has just happened. So we're going to read this few psukim and see what happens and see what the outcome is and see what parsha you have to tell us about this. This is chapter 17 in Bamidbar. Starting actually in the middle of the chapter with verse 16, because again, as I said, we have a number of different incidents in the parsha. This is one. It says the following: Daber b'nei Yisrael. Shem speaks to Moshe and says, "Speak to bnei Yisrael. V'kach me'itam, and take from them mateh, which mateh is literally as a staff. Generally, I would say a mateh. The normal translation for mateh is probably what we would today call in English a walking stick. Back then, basically, people had walking sticks. A mateh. Oh, wait, mateh Yudah. Now, mateh has a second meaning. Mateh also means a tribe, a group. Okay? So we have, for example, the mateh Yudah, the mateh Binyamin. We had that in many times throughout Sefer Bamidbar where it's listing things for each of the tribes. They are called mateh. So mateh has a dual meaning here. Number one, it means, as I said, typically a stick because we have the mateh of Moshe. If we think about going back to Egypt, every time Moshe Hashem speaks to Moshe, he says, "Take the stick with you, the staff, which he's done all these symbols and signs in Egypt with." So a mateh, as I said, is a staff. Although the Parshanim are going to give some different interpretations of what mateh is, but here we're talking about mateh leveit of, for each family. May 8 kol nesi'ehem, from each of the heads of the tribes, leveit avotam, according to their tribes, according to their literally according to their fathers' houses. Shnei masar matot. Moshe is to take 12 staffs. But again, notice Shnei masar matot, 12 tribes. Okay, so he's taking a staff for each of the 12 tribes. Ish et shmo tichtov al mateo, and each person's name is to be written on their staff. Gershon has a question. A staff could be Gershon's question is, could a staff also be a shepherd's crook? And the answer is absolutely yes. A mateh would also, a shepherd who would carry the mateh would be a shepherd's crook. Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I say mateh has a number of different meanings, but again, typically, as I said, it's a walking stick or a shepherd's crook or any other type of, again, accoutrement here. But again, typically, as also, as I said, the secondary meaning for mateh is also the tribe. So again, if I look at the way most of the people translate this pasuk, if you look at most translations, it will say, take from them a staff for each beit of. See, now beit of has number of different meanings. So Beit Av means a father's house. Now that could mean, in theory, Moshe had thousands of sticks, one for each sub-family tribe or sub-family tribe. We don't know. But again, then it says Shtei Asar Matot. He's only supposed to take 12 sticks. So the assumption is that he's taking one per tribe. That seems to be the assumption here, even though, again, it uses the term Beit Av. Beit Av generally is a larger, is a small, I think it's a smaller group, a more delineation, definition than a tribe itself per se. Okay, so, but again, now each on each of these sticks that is to be taken, there's to be a name written. And whose name is to be written? You are to write the name of Aharon on the staff that belongs to the tribe of Levi. There's only one staff for each, literally for each tribe, but here again, it's called for the head of each family division. Beit Av is again a family division based on a patriarchal lineage rather than a matriarchal lineage. That's what Beit Avot means. Although in today modern Hebrew, Beit Avot has a completely different meaning. But that's what it means here. You should leave and let these come to rest in the tent of meeting, in the Oel Moed, the Mishkan, the interior of the Mishkan. They're to be placed in front of the Aron, which is normally the place where I, Hashem, meet with you, where I come to meet with you, specifically you, Moshe, but you as a representative of all of Klal Yisrael. That's where I come to meet with you. That is where you are to place these staffs. And it will be that the person whom I choose, his staff will blossom, will produce parachim, flowers. Okay, now remember, we're taking a piece of wood. This is not a piece of wood that's attached to the ground. This is a staff. Okay, remember that. Okay, but Hashem is saying that it's going to cause one of these staffs is going to blossom. Vashikoti me'alai, and I will put to rest, I will cause to come to a conclusion from upon me at Telunot Bnei Yisrael, all the complaints of Bnei Yisrael, Asher Heim Alinim Aleichem, that they are complaining. Now, interestingly enough, Hashem doesn't say the Telunot, the complaints that they're complaining against me, says the complaints that they're complaining against you, Moshe. Okay? So that's the commandment from Moshe. So of course, from Hashem. So of course, what does Moshe do? Hashem told him to speak to Bnei Yisrael. He speaks to Bnei Yisrael. Do a love, and they give him kol nesiehem, all of their princes of the tribe. Matel nasi achad leveit avotam. One mateh for each nasi, for each of their father's houses. Shnei masar matot, but it was only a total of 12 matot. Umatei Aaron bitoch matotam. Among the 12 was the staff of Aaron. So if we think about it, if Levi is represented, that means that Yosef now goes back to being a single tribe, not Menashe and Ephraim split. Otherwise, there would have been 13 staff. So once we include, remember, there are always 12 tribes. We either count Levi and Yosef becomes one, or we don't count Levi and Menashe Ephraim become two separate tribes. And you see that throughout. That's a very consistent division throughout the history of Am Yisrael. That when we always have 12. We never have 11, and we never have 13. There are always 12 tribes. When Levi is counted as one of the tribes, it excludes Menashe and Ephraim. It includes Yosef as a single tribe. When Levi is excluded, we have Menashe and Ephraim separately. And as I can give you lots of examples offline, if you're interested. Moshe leaves these sticks, the staffs, in for Hashem do it as he's told in the tent of meeting. And it comes the next morning. Moshe comes to the tent to see what's going on. There are blossoms on the staff of Aaron, which is from the tribe of Levi. Vayotze perach. So first it has blossoms, then it has brachim, it has flowers. Vayotze tzitz, it has a beginning of the kernel of a fruit. Vayigmol shkedim, and ultimately it brings forth almonds. So not only does the staff have regeneration of a few leaves, it brings forth fruit. Okay? Vayotze Moshe kol hamatot milifnei Hashem. Moshe brings all of these staffs that are from, he takes them from before Hashem, that's where they were. El kol b'nei Yisrael, he brings them out to the group. Vayiru, and they see Vayikhu ish mateo, and each of the tribal leaders takes their staff. Okay, so again, it seems that though that through bringing the staffs out into the common area and bringing them among the people, everybody was going to ask, well, whose staff was the one that blossomed, right? And everybody was going to have to answer, well, you see, it wasn't mine. See, it wasn't mine. So all of the tribes will know that the one that did blossom was Aaron. Okay, so that's the purpose. Before Gershon's questions, before they went in, they were identified with tribes. If we go back, each one had a name written on it. Well, how they wrote it, it doesn't get into. Did they write it by etching it in with a stylus? Did they write it by using ink? I don't know. All I know is each staff was identified by name written on each. Eshmo tichtov al mateu. Each one had a name written on it. Now, whether it had only the name of the tribal leader or it had the name of the tribal leader and the tribe, great question. But there was a name written to identify each staff. Said, oh yeah, that one looks like his. That one. Each one had a name written on it for identification. They brought, Lois's question, they brought the staffs to the people, or they let the people look at the staffs? Great question. If we look at the Pasuk Chaftal, Pasuk 24, it says that Moshe takes the staffs, all of them, not just the one that blossomed, all 12 of them, out from where they were inside the Ohel Moed, because nobody's allowed to go in the Ohel Moed. The people don't go in there. El Kol B'nai Yisrael. He took them out to where B'nai Yisrael were. Now, was there a whole congregation? Did everybody come that next morning because they want to see which staff blossomed? Probably. Knowing the way they worked back then, remember, nobody had to go to work. Nobody was going anywhere. So they probably all gathered around to see what happened. And Moshe shows them all. By Yeru, they see, by Yikuish Mateo. But again, if we look at the middle of the pasuk, El Kol B'nai Yisrael, it seems though he brought it out to where everybody was. But if we look at the end, this is by Yeru, they saw by Yiklu, and they took Ish Mateo. It seems as though the only ones who were there when he goes through it, comes out, are the 12 tribal leaders, because they each see their staff and take it. I mean, all 600,000 people didn't take a staff. There weren't 600,000. There were only 12 staffs there. So it seems, as I said, that's why I said the pasuk is contradictory, because El Kol B'nai Yisrael. So what I think happened is that the 12 tribal leaders were probably gathered around Moshe, or gathered right in front, and the rest of the people were all gathered around to see what happened. And Moshe and the 12 tribal leaders each see that Aaron's staff is the one that blossomed. They each take their own staff to show the people in their tribe that mine isn't the one that blossomed, presumably. Okay, now, Vayom Hashem, just two more psukim, I think, two more psukim. Vayom Hashem Moshe, Hashem says to Moshe, Hashem et matei Aaron lifnei oidut. I don't want you to allow Aaron to just take his staff and let it go somewhere. You have to return it back to where it came from, to the in front of the in the tent, in the Mishkan, lemishmeret as a guard, leot as a sign, livnei Mary, to all of those who wish to rebel. Utachal telunotam me'alai, and well, the Kohan again, it's there for posterity. So presumably if it's needed, Lois's question was, well, if it's in the Mishkan, then nobody can see it except perhaps the Kohanim were going in to do the work. And because remember, generally people did not go into the inner part of the Mishkan. That was strictly the province of the Kohanim. People didn't go in there. The general populace only went as far as the Mizbeach. That's it. They could not go into the Kodeshim, where, but Hashem tells Moshe, put it back there. Through the fact that it's there, all the complaints that are upon me will end. The lo yamutu, and the people won't die by trying to become Kohanim. Vayas Moshe, and Moshe did as Hashem commanded him. Kasher tziva Hashem oto ken asa. As Hashem commanded him, that's what he did. By the way, the Gemara, when it lists a number of items that traveled with Am Yisrael throughout the 40 years and throughout the first temple period, this staff, which blossomed, is one of the things that is always listed among the Mishkan. There's the jar of mun that is set aside. There's the original luchot, and there's the Sefer Torah that Moshe written. All of these things are part and parcel of the Mishkan and ultimately of the Beit HaMikdash. And when the Aron is hidden away, all of these things are hidden away with them. Okay, to be found presumably when Mashiach comes and Hashem is ready for it to be revealed. Okay, so that's the story. Now I want to understand. So what firstly, if I were to ask you at this point, what is it that Hashem is trying to create? What is it what type of complaints is Hashem trying to, not fend off is not the right word, to put an end to? Okay, if I open this fairly, whose name is on the staff? Aaron. So it appears, and again, if we go back to the beginning where it appears as though people were arguing about who should be the Kohanim, that seems to be the case. However, there were going to be two schools of thought among the Parshanim. School number thought says, one, that the complaint was primarily against the Kohanim. School number two says the complaints were primarily against the selection of the Leviim. So these two different selections, if we think about how Am Yisrael has been, we've gone through, we know the Leviim are separated to work in the Mishkan, to carry the Mishkan, to sing in the Mishkan. The Kohanim are to do the Avodah in the Mishkan. So we have two different groups that are separate from Am Yisrael. And again, the question now is, which of those two groups is this supposed to be not defending against, but preempting from complaining against? Okay, that's what we're going to see among the Parshanim. So we start as usual with Rashi. Rashi first tells us, there's one tribe. Afal pi, even though Hashem says to Moshe, even though the tribe of Levi is divided into two different functions, two different families. Who are they? Mishpachat Kehuna, the family of the Kohanim. Mishpachat Levad is its own family, its own sub-tribe. Levia Levad, and the Leviim are separate because the Kohanim don't do Leviim's work. Leviim don't do Kohanim's work. Mikol Makom Shevet Echadu. Even so, they're all one tribe and they only get one stick. Moshe, in other words, Shem is telling Moshe, you might have thought that the tribe of Levi gets one stick for the Leviim, one stick for the Kohanim. No, one stick for all of tribe of Levi. Okay. B'toch matotam. Now it says that he leaves Aaron's staff in the middle of all the other staffs. And Rashi is a very interesting midrash comment. He nichol be'ekta. That Aaron was not put to the far right, to the far left, to the far north, to the far south. It was right in the middle of all of the staffs. Shalo yom, so people wouldn't say the next morning when Aaron's is the one that blossomed. You know why it blossomed? Because it was the one that was closest to the Aaron Kodesh. The reason it got the fruit flowing from it because it was the one closest to the Aaron Kodesh. So when the spiritual power from the Aaron Kodesh came, it hit the first staff. So Rashi says, no, Aaron's staff was not the closest to the Aaron Kodesh. It was definitely not. It was in the middle of the group. That's why it says b'toch matotam, in the midst of the rest of the staffs, rather than im matotam. Okay. Vayotze perach kimishpao, as it says. Okay, and then Rashi explains what this means. Vayotze tzitz is chanatat haprisha pareach nofel. In other words, tzitz is the beginning of the actual fruit. The bud is the tzitz. So as it goes through three stages, it goes through a flowering stage, a bud stage, and then an actual fruit stage. Okay, that's what Rashi says, and that's why the Torah describes it here. Three different stages. Vayotze perach, vayotze tzitz, vayikbol shkedim. Three verbs, three nouns. Each are described. Each stage is described separately. Okay. Now Rashi asks again. The interesting question is: we find that the fruit that grows is shkedim. Shkedim are almonds. The word shkedim, shkedian, they get their name because shoked, the Hebrew word shin kaf daled shoked, means alacrity, haste, something that happens quickly. Okay. So the question is, why is this the fruit that's chosen by Hashem for the staff to blossom? Okay, and Rashi says, very interesting. V'lama shkedim, why shkedim specifically? Why didn't it grow, grapes, olives, any other fruit? Why dafka? Of course, whatever would have grown, we would have asked why that also, but that's a different question. Okay, the question Rashi wants to know is, why dafka did it pick shkedim, almonds? Especially shkedim, if you think of almonds, when almonds are ripe, they taste very, very bitter. Almonds are only edible after they are generally after they're processed. They're not fresh. You don't pull an almond off the tree and eat it unless you happen to like bitter things. Okay, you'll find it's very bitter. I've never tasted it, so I don't know. I just eat my almonds after they've been processed. But okay, why dafka shkedim? Hu pri hamimaher lefriach mikol haperot. It happens to be the earliest blossoming, the fastest blossoming of all the fruit trees is the almond tree. That's why we have our Shkedia Parachat. If you think of Tu B'Shvat songs, you think Shkedia. There's always the almond tree is always the first to blossom, because again, and that's where I think why they're called Shkedim, because of that haste, that hurriness. And now why? Okay, that's very nice. That's the earliest fruit to blossoms. That's a nice biological fact that Rashi telling us. What does that have to do with this specific tree blossoming into Shkedim? Av hame'orer al hakehuna. Rashi is somebody who argues and thinks that they can become a Kohen and they're not descended from Aaron. For anato mimaheret lavo, their punishment will come immediately, quickly, right away, rapidly. Just like the Shkedim grow very quickly, so too anybody who thinks they can become a Kohen and they're not will be punished immediately, quickly. Kemoshe matzino be'Uziah, as we find with Uziah in Divrei Hayamim Vatzarat Korach Zarcha b'Mitzcho, that Uziah, the king, who thought he could be the Kohen, he said, "Hey, I'm the king. I'm so close to Hashem. I should be able to be a Kohen too." Even though he was from Beis David, Yehuda, he was not. And immediately, when he went into the Beit HaMikdash to try to bring Ketoret, immediately he became Tzara. And that's exactly what Rashi is. It was an immediate punishment. Okay. Okay. So that's what now again, Rashi is saying here that the whole lesson of this episode is me'orer al hakehuna, somebody who complains and wants to become a Kohen who isn't a Kohen. Nothing else. It has nothing to do with the tribe of Levi. It has to do simply with Kohanim, and that's why Aharon's name is the one that's written on the staff as the leader of the tribe, because primary purpose of this whole test is me'orer, to stop people from arguing the fact that Aharon is divinely selected to be the progenitor, the Kohen and progenitor of all Kohanim. That's what this test is for, according to Rashi, strictly to Kohanim. Okay? Okay, and again, Lemishmeret Lo, and Rashi again emphasizes it when he says that it should be a sign, an eternal sign. That's why Moshe has to put it back, not let it just be a one-time signal. This is an eternal signal. Lezikaron, as a remembrance, Shebacharti bi Aaron HaKohen. I chose Aaron. V'lo yilonu od al hakehuna. There should be no more complaints about people thinking that they can become Kohanim because I have chosen Aaron, period, end of discussion. And this is the divine sign, because a piece of wood, plain piece of wood, blossomed fruit, and not just blossomed once in history. It stayed, that fruit, that almond, those almonds that it blossomed remain fresh for the next 500 years. Okay, so it's not just a one-time deal, and that's exactly why it stays there, so that at any point in time where anybody thought they would rebel against the Kohanim would take the stick, presumably show it to the people. This is what happens to people who think they can become Kohanim who aren't descended from Aaron. Okay, that's Rashi's interpretation. Rashbam goes similarly. Okay, let's go back. Okay, here we go. Now, Rashbam also says similarly, but he adds one thing that I think is very interesting, because I never even thought of it before I read this Rashbam. I think it's a very interesting Rashbam. It had, again, flowered, bud, and fruit. Now, Nira Lefi Hapshat, the simple explanation, Rashbam says, no, if I ask you what does that pasuk mean, I would say that when Moshe went in, there was fruit on it already, right? And it had buds, it had blossoms, and it had fruits, all on it at the same time, according to the way the pasuk seems to imply. Rashbam says no. Nira Lefi Hapshat, he showed Tzio Moshe Mitzau Sheparach V'lo Yoter. When Moshe originally goes in, the only thing that was there was the blossom. The little leaves were there. There were some leaves that were blossoming on Aaron's staff. Because originally it says V'nei Parach Matei Aaron Leveit Levi. That originally when Moshe goes in, it seems that There were two things. First, it had parach. And after he took it out, after Moshe is standing there and brings it out, by Yatzei Tzitzle, Nei Kol Yisrael, it brings forth the bud and the fruit only when it's in front of everybody. So everybody is watching this stick that had the buds on it, that had the leaves on it, suddenly budding to a bud and blossoming into fruit in front of their eyes, immediately, instantaneously. And that's why Vayiru, Bnei Yisrael saw the sign. It wasn't that overnight it blossomed. When Moshe brings it out, that's when it blossoms, according to Rashbam. Because that's the normal way fruit grows. Right? If it all happened overnight, if it all happened at once, when Moshe went in, it was already had fruit on it. Then all of the budding, the blast, the leaves generally fall off before the fruit grows. The bud, you can't see the bud once the fruit grows. In other words, if all I saw was the end fruit, the end almond growing, I wouldn't have seen the bud, because the bud is what grows into the almond. If it already had grown into an almond, then where was the bud? Why does the Torah say it had a bud? Where was the leaves? The leaves fall off generally when the bud forms. So Rashbam is saying in order for everybody to have witnessed all three phases, they had to have happened afterwards. So the first phase happened overnight. The second and third happened later on, according to Rashbam. If the fact is it already produced fruit when Moshe walks in, then this whole pasuk is superfluous. They should have just said that that there were shkedim going out of Aaron's staff. There was the fact that it lists all three stages means that they happened in front of everybody's eye. They could all see it. Okay. Again, Rashbam, as I said, is very simply follows Rashi in terms of that this is against that the proof is the proof of choice of Aaron is Kohen. As he says, they marry lidorot. It should be a sign for all generations. The Brodar Habayim, for the generations that come. Sheyirtzu Limrod, who want to rebel against the Kohanim. Kigon Uzziah. He gives the same example that Rashi gives. Uzziah Melech, because that's the example that's most well known, but because it's in the Tanakh. Okay. Now Ramban goes in a different direction. The other direction, as we said. Okay. Shnei Masamatot Materon Ubiyud Beit. Ki lo amar v'tikach mateh leveit levi v'tichtov alav shem Aaron. It doesn't say take mateh for Beit Levi and write shem Aaron. Avalu b'binyan and Yizkar. It's one of the 12. Vinei, and as I said, is from Ban is one who says lo nechshav Yosef rak l'shevet echad. Yosef here is only considered one tribe. We don't have Menashe and Ephraim separately in order to keep the number 12 once we've put Levi back in. But Tam, the reason is we always have 12 tribes exactly, never 13, never 11. Once we include Levi, Yachshav Yosef, we have to put Menashe and Ephraim back together into Yosef, Rak Echad, as one tribe. And he says he'll explain this further when we get to Zot Bracha, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, now, Ish et Shemo Tichtov al Mateu. What did they write on each of these staffs to identify them? That was the question. Yesh Mefarshim, some Mefarshim say, Shem Rosh HaShevet. They wrote the name of the tribal ancestor. They wrote Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. That's what some people want to explain, that they didn't write Nachshon ben Aminadav, they wrote Shevet Yehuda. Okay, V'hanachon. But again, Ramban seems that the way the text seems to say it is Shema Nisiim, that they wrote the names of the tribal leaders. V'yasa Aaron Nasi l'Shevet Levi, and Aaron, by his name being written on the staff, is the Nasi for Shevet Levi. V'hutzvach lefarij. Okay, and we wanted to explain, and again, very similar to what now he's going to quote Rashi, that the tribe of Levi is, and the Kohen have one leader. Again, similar as Rashi just said. Okay, now Who is this? Who is this trial? What is this supposed to prove? Again, as I asked Ramban first, as usual, quotes Rashi. He quotes Rashi, says that the whole purpose of this test is to remind people forever that the only Kohanim come from Aaron, are descended from Aaron. That's it. Nobody else can be a Kohen. V'lo yilonu al kahuna, so they will no longer try to, people who will want to be, what Kohen wannabes who will be complaining, I want to be a Kohen, unless they already are a Kohen, then it works. That's Lashon Rashi. Again, Ramban quotes that from Rashi. The Ein Hamateh Hazel Ot. Ramban says, no. This staff that has Aaron's name written on it has nothing to do with the Kohahuna. Rak al Mateh Levi Shenivchar Mishar Shvatim. Is only to tell us that the tribe of Levi is the one that's chosen from all the other tribes. Lo al Aaron Shatia lo hakuna. Has nothing to do with Aaron being the Kohen. It has to do with the Leviim being selected instead of the firstborn to be the ones who carry the Mishkan, who sing in the Mishkan, who assist the Kohanim in their duties. V'hanachon l'mishmeret liot al shevet Levi t'murat habechorot. That the insertion of the tribe of Levi instead of the firstborn. Ki haserefa, the fact that the 250 people who tried to bring Ketoret were burned, ot al hakehuna. That's the sign of the Kohanim, and that's why their pans, if we go back to the story that precedes this one in the Parsha, the pans that were used in the rebellion had to be hammered into a coating, a covering for the Mizbeach, so that everybody could see it and could see that you cannot argue to be a Kohen. That's from that story. This story strictly has to do with tribe of Levi, not the Kohanim. But Perach, he says, Raman al ha-Leviya Kimoshe Pirashti. The Perach, the fact that we have this fruit, this staff that blossoms, is only against the tribe of Levi. People who complain that they're firstborn who want to become Leviim. The Zetam Perach Matei Aharon. That's why the pasuk says, don't say Matei Aharon, that Aaron's staff blossomed to God's good. Matei Aharon Leveit Levi. Aaron, as the representative of the tribe of Levi, is the one whose staff blossoms. Not Aaron the individual, but Aaron the head of the tribe of Levi. Ki lechol beit Levi parach uvizechutab. That this growth of this on this tree, on this stick, comes from the whole family of Levi, and that's whose merit it grows, and not Aaron only. Okay? Once through the staff, we understand that the tribe of Levi is the one that was chosen, not the firstborn. Now will no longer be any complaints about Aaron, since he also is recognized as the leader of Shevet Levi. He has the leadership of this tribe through this staff. So that again, it's almost falling back and saying really has a 1.5, almost a dual purpose, even though the primary deterrent to people wanting to become Kohanim, we already had. This is primarily for tribe of Levi, but secondarily, it's also for the Kahuna. Ve'eno nachon ve'enai ki Gershon b'chor Levi. This is not correct that Aaron is the leader of the tribe of Levi. That's to show that but really it's the fact that show the Levium in general are chosen, not the firstborn. Fiskuni goes in a very similar direction as Ramban. Again, he begins at the beginning. Why are we supposed to take all these staffs? They are again complaining about the Levium. They're not complaining about the Kohanim anymore. They had that, they're already finished. The war against the Kohanim is finished. They still want to become Levium. The firstborn still want to do the job of Levium. The sign that we had before with the Hatoret is for Aaron. But we now are going to need, this sign is going to be for the tribe of Levi versus vis-a-vis the other tribes. And that's exactly why we have this, okay? Again, what are the complaints of Bnei Yisrael? Tzkuni says very simply, She'omrim, there are people, what are the people complaining? That the choice to appoint the Leviim instead of the firstborn was not from Hashem. Moshe, you decided you wanted to give your pure nepotism, Moshe. You picked the people from your tribe. You wanted them to have the best job. So you gave them, you threw out the firstborn and gave them. That's exactly why we need the sign, because people were still complaining that Moshe is the one who chose the Leviim. Okay. Let's continue with the Klei Yakar. Okay, Klei Yakar has a very, very interesting comment on this whole thing, on this whole story. First and foremost, he notes that the fact that this whole thing clearly is miraculous. Okay, that's the first thing we have to acknowledge, and it seems that it is. Remez, what is this supposed to allude to? This whole point of the staffs. This whole story is a reminder that Hashem doesn't work the way people work. The things we see are not the things Hashem sees. A person sees a walking stick, a dried out walking stick, right? Has no moisture left in it. Torah v'chokhmah, or in the case of a person, he sees a person who seems to have no spiritual value, no Torah, no wisdom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu mafricho. All of a sudden, HaKadosh Baruch Hu causes him to blossom. You might have somebody who was a kid, all the teachers wrote him off. And suddenly, wow, he has one teacher who wakes him up and says, wow, this is really where and suddenly we find that he becomes the number one in the class. V'chein behefa. But also similarly, same thing happens in reverse. You remember somebody who looks like they're going to be the top, the next gadol hador, and suddenly they fizzle out. Same thing here with the tree. Okay. We have a verse in Yechezkel that says, Hashem, that the Navi says in the name of Hashem, I've caused a moist tree to dry up and a dried up tree to flower. Hashem does it when and he says, interestingly enough, that there were many miracles. This story is perhaps the source of the Midrash that says even the inanimate objects in the Mishkan produced fruit. Even the inanimate objects in the Mishkan, such as the gold, produced fruit. The Midrash says there was somebody that donated golden apples to the Beit HaMikdash, and they had golden apple fruit. Okay, it's nice Midrash, but again, it seems that the Klei Yakar wants to say that perhaps it's based on this. Okay, that was part I wanted to quote from the Klei Yakar, and we're going to go to the Orach Chaim, who has something very interesting. We're going to skip all the rest of this. Okay. Okay. Nira shehem beit bin inyanim. Chaim says it seems that there are two different things going on here. Number one is, he's supposed to, Hashem is commanding Bnei Yisrael to bring these sticks. And Moshe is to take them from them. Speak, he's supposed to speak to Am Yisrael, and he's supposed to take them. But wait a minute, he didn't mention that Bnei Yisrael are supposed to bring these sticks to him. All this is to hint that we have something going on here. That this whole story is in addition to the previous story where they took all the pans and made them into a cover for the Mizbeach, to show that Hashem chose Aaron. Okay, it says, and interesting here. Again, it says, first it says you're supposed to take from Am Yisrael, and then it says, take from all of their Nisiyim. Okay? So it's interesting because what Moshe, what our Chaim HaKadosh wants to say is the following. Le'akev shelo yikach hamatot ela me'itam, v'lo yikach Moshe ba'adam. That the source of all of these staffs has to be Bnei Yisrael. It's not like Moshe took 12 sticks and said each one of the tribal leaders, pick one, write your name on it, give it back to me. The tribe itself brought this staff. Okay? Okay, if all it had said in the pasuk was "Kaf me'eit kol nisiehem," take from each of the tribal leaders a staff, we would have said, okay, each of them would appoint Moshe to pick a staff for them and give it to them to write their name on. The point of me'eit kol nisiehem means it has to belong to them. Okay. Uliola Moshe Kach, but Moshe can pick one of their staffs, whatever they have. Maybe they had 10 different walking sticks. Moshe can pick one. The word me'itam, kach me'itam, in other words, it seems to be a duplicate wording of the pasuk. Take from them, from each of the tribe, from each of the leaders. The Talmud says, "Shelo yemakom lomar ki Moshe bachar lam eitz lo yitzlach." The whole reason that they had to first present the staff to Moshe, rather than Moshe giving them a staff, write your name on it and give it back to me, is so that nobody could complain, oh, Moshe fixed the test. He put 12 pieces of wood. One of them had still growth in it. It was a freshly cut one. The other 11 were ones that were cut hundreds of years ago, and they were all dead and inert. So obviously, Aaron's was the one that was closest to blossoming. The reason, so nobody could say that, everybody picked their own stick. They picked it, they wrote their name on it, and gave it to Moshe. And that is alluded to by the fact that it adds the word me'itam and me'et kol nesiehem. Okay? Okay. Again, same very similar phraseology in terms of the word what was written on Aaron. Sivan mikodem lakachat matel levi yagi ki bichlal hayud bet matot. Again, we're reminded that Levi is here included among the 12 by the fact that it says Al Tichtov, you have to write Aaron's name Al Mate Levi, that there already is a stick for Levi, that it's included in the 12. Okay, now Korach gives a very interesting possibility. He says we have Sharlomar. Perhaps what was done was the following. Shekachasu, the following. Shelaku eitzechad. They actually didn't take walking sticks. They took a tree. They took a piece of wood. They divided it into 12 pieces. Okay, they took a piece of wood, divided it into 12 pieces. The whole shevet lakach, and each of the tribes took one of the 12 pieces. So there, from here, we have this possibility that nobody can complain. Oh, you got a better grade of wood than I got. You got a better piece. They all had pieces of the same tree, so nobody could complain that the Hefresh shel Aaron shel Kulav shebazeh yitzdak hamivchan. Because if you take 12 different trees, well, we could say, one of the trees was a better quality tree than the other. All 12 pieces were taken from the same tree. So nobody could, it's again, an even greater lack of guarantee that people can no longer complain. Guess what? Sure, they could find a way to complain. People want to complain, they always find a way to complain. But the point is, Hashem and Moshe are setting up the conditions to try to already negate any possible complaint. So not only do they put them all in the same place, does he make sure Aaron's is not closest or furthest away from anything. He puts all 12 together, so they can't complain. But again, not only that, but again, each of the 12 are all taken from the same tree, the same piece of wood. And that is what it means, love, that they should give to him rather than they should take. Okay? In other words, they have to give it back to them. That Aaron was right in the middle. It was the same tree. It was the same piece of wood that all of the trees came from. So again, we see that Moshe, from all of these parshanim, are trying to add layer upon layer upon layer of the proof that this was a miracle that could not be explained away. And again, we have the same thing with the 250 pans, with the Torah. We constantly have the Torah describing seemingly open miracles that cannot be explained away, even though today we have people who are trying to explain away every single miracle in the Torah as a natural phenomenon. I've seen all sorts of interesting videos of people explaining all 10 plagues, how they all happen perfectly naturally. How Korach swallowing by the earth, perfectly natural occurrence. Earthquake, standard earthquake. The earth always opens up its mouth, swallows people, and doesn't. You're absolutely right. Perfectly natural. And by the way, there are those that say it was perfectly natural. What's miraculous about it is that it shows up at the exact instant Moshe asked for it to show up. That's what makes it miraculous. It was a perfectly natural phenomenon. It's the same thing, by the way, with all the plagues. All the plagues are perfectly explainable scientifically and naturally. That's the whole point of them. What is that makes them miraculous? They come exactly on schedule when Moshe tells them to come. And they end exactly when Moshe tells them to. And not Moshe, of course, as Hashem's representative. That's the whole point. The whole point is we can explain many things in the Torah that we seem to take as, quote, miracles. We can explain scientifically. I can explain every single thing that happens in the world scientifically. Childbirth, okay? It's a miracle, the miracle of life. If you go and you do all the scientific studies of all the evolutionists who want to say, what is the probability that single-celled animals suddenly manufacture all these different items that are needed, the probability is 1 in 500 trillion, quadrillion, whatever the number is, okay? So large a number that it's virtually zero. And yet, again, scientifically, they can theoretically explain how this could have happened, how there's a probability that it could have happened. The fact is that that's what miracles are. Miracles are things that could be explained scientifically. That's exactly the same thing here. Could we explain how Aaron's tree suddenly blossomed? Sure, I can take if I cut a piece of a tree and I put it in soil, in theory, if it's got enough sap in it, it will regenerate. That's what trees do. It's what seeds do. They regenerate. But the fact here that, again, we took 12 pieces from the same exact tree, 12 cuttings from the same exact tree, put them in the same exact environment, and only one of the 12 grew, means somebody had a green thumb, right? Okay. Anyway, having said all this, I think the lesson really of this whole chapter and the parshanim, I think, really try to emphasize this, is the fact that we can explain away everything we choose to explain away, or we can accept the fact that everything we acknowledge as being from Hashem is being from Hashem. And whether that's, again, as I say, our daily lives, whether we talk about natural miracles that I take a seed and I throw it in the ground and suddenly it grows. How does that work? Okay, if I take a coin, if I take my, I want to grow a money tree, I take my coin and bury it, it's not going to work. Why does the seed work and the money doesn't work? That's the way the world, Hashem made the world. But all of these things that we, quote, take for granted as part of nature are just as miraculous as all of these other things. And that really is, I think, one of the key lessons of this parsha, that Hashem runs the world in ways we cannot always understand. We try the best we can to understand the natural world, and Hashem is okay with us trying to understand. That's one of the things we're supposed to be doing, trying to understand His world and because through understanding Hashem's world, we get a better understanding of Hashem as the creator of that world. And when we're able to realize that and take that and do that on an everyday basis, when no matter what it is we are witnessing, no matter what it is we are going through, no matter what the challenges we as individuals or as Am Yisrael are going through, we have to realize that Hashem is there. Hashem is watching us. Hashem is watching over us and caring for us. And when we are able to have that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the extent that we care for all of Hashem's world, and we want to have a relationship with Hashem, and we help others come closer to Hashem, then we can continue to grow, and we will be Zocher to Kula Shleim Meher V'Yameinu. Thank you all. I concluded this point and open up for questions, comments, or feedback. Anybody out in Zoom? Questions? Comments? Okay, thank you all. Have a good rest of the week. And Ezra Hashem, we will see you next week, same time, same. And remember, and eventually, as I said, toward the end of the summer, we will go back to the regular 8 o'clock. Lila Tov, everyone, and have a good rest of the week.